Hello, Jeremy Chambers, Independence Acres Homestead here. It's a beautiful Saturday morning here in southeast Michigan. We are expecting sunshine and highs in the mid to upper 90s. And because of that, we're preparing to do battle on two fronts. First, fighting the weeds in the garden, and second, fighting the temperatures with our livestock. So when it comes to fighting weeds in the garden, we've got a couple tools that we employ here on our homestead. The first is I'm going to be cutting the weeds down with our machete. We've gotten, with these rain that we've had and the warmer temperatures, we've gotten some weeds that have reached maybe a foot and a half in height. And we're not going to be using any chemical treatment on these. We try to keep all of our garden chemical free, except for, natural and organic fertilizers. So we're going to be using mechanical methods in order to remove the weeds. So first we'll be cutting them down with the machete, just cutting them down as close to the ground as we possibly can. And second, we're going to be working on laying down some cardboard and then putting grass clippings and wood chips and compost over top of that in order to create a nice effective weed barrier to keep those suckers from coming back. So first step here is a little sharpening of the machete. Now, the machete doesn't need to be super sharp in order to cut the weeds down, but we do need to have at least a decent edge to get a good cut on them. Because we don't just want to be bashing them down, we actually want to be cutting them at ground level. So I've got my little $5 Harbor Freight machete here, a little rusty but trusty. And then I'm just hitting it with my Lansky field sharpener here, coarse and fine. Okay, so before you go through and just eradicate every weed out of your garden, remember that some of them might actually be beneficial. So go ahead and make sure that you can identify what plants it is that you're removing from your garden, because remember, some of them might be beneficial for you and your livestock. If you're curious about what I'm talking about, go ahead and watch our video about weeding the garden and feeding the rabbits. And maybe that'll give you a little bit of insight into some of the weeds that we deal with here in Michigan and some of the weeds that you might find in your garden which could be beneficial. Okay, so this patch of weeds is right as we walk into our garden. Now, as you can see over here, we've already got most of the garden on this side already cardboarded and mulched in with our lawn clippings. But this area here we didn't do because we're waiting for this squash back over here behind me to go ahead and begin growing. Because we weren't sure 100% whether or not it was going to grow, and I didn't want to disturb the soil around it by pulling up weeds. So now that we've got those squash nicely established, we're going to come through with the machete that I've freshly sharpened, clean out some of these weeds, and get that cardboard laid down. Okay, now that we've got the weeds chopped down, we're going to start laying down cardboard. Now, I'm not going to rake these leaves out because their decomposing matter is actually going to help put nutrition back into the soil. So we're just going to lay the cardboard right over top of those chopped weeds, and that'll help them to decompose and break down a little faster. Now, there are a few things we do in order to make sure that we're not introducing a lot of chemicals into our garden. That's we're going to remove as many of the stickers and labels and tape as possible off the boxes. We also try not to use boxes that have print on them, like your boxes from U-Haul and stuff, just because we're not 100% sure what kind of chemicals are used in the printing. Now, when it comes to boxes, a lot of people will just open them up and lay them out like this. Now, the reason why I don't like doing this is because you leave gaps where the flaps are, where weeds can penetrate up through, and then you have to overlap that, and then you're going to waste almost a foot of cardboard in overlapping. So what I like to do is actually rip it down into each section, and then I can lay out a section of cardboard that will allow us to overlap but not waste as much surface area on that cardboard. Once the cardboard's laid, now we're going to start overlapping it with some of the organic matter that we have piled up over here. These are just some grass clippings. We've also got some mulched chipped wood that we've had from trimming the trees around the property here last week, and we're just going to start layering that on. Now ideally you want this to be 3, 4, 8 inches thick. We're just going to spread it as deep as we can with the material that we have, and we'll add to it as the weeks go on and as we continue to mow the lawn, collect our grass clippings, acquire mulch and compost from other areas. Alright, so we're going to finish applying cardboard and the organic matter on top of the cardboard here in this area of the garden, and then we'll move over and try to do the aisle next to the corn. As I've stated in the past, one of the top enemies of rabbits, besides predators and disease, is going to be heat. Rabbits can handle cold temperatures, down to 0 Fahrenheit, no issues whatsoever. They're able to, handle with a little bit of extra care from us, but what really gets them is temperatures over 85, pushing 90 degrees, especially for those of us who breed in northern climates. Because our rabbits just are not acclimated to those temperatures. Now, we're going to be reaching, like I said, mid-90s, maybe even upper 90s today. And with the humidity, it just gets a little oppressive here in Michigan. So we're going to be fighting those temperatures today with our rabbits in order to make sure that they get through today and any other days where we're going to be pushing those kind of temperatures. Now, the most susceptible ones are the bunnies. Those that are not quite old enough to make it out of the nest box because they just don't quite have the same airflow in there. So first thing we're going to do is we're going to turn on our 12-volt fans that we have running off of our solar system here in our bunny barn. And then after that, as the temperature begins to climb, we're going to bring in a slightly larger fan to keep moving that air around. And then finally, once we get over about about 85, 86 degrees, we're going to start bringing out some ceramic tiles that we've had in the freezer, set aside specifically for this purpose. Now, I went out this week and I bought some inexpensive tiles. They were about $1 a piece at our local big box store. They don't need special terrazza or even marble or granite or anything of that nature. Just some basic ceramic tiles is all that they need in order to help them get through these warm temperatures. So we're going to take those ceramic tiles that we have, we freeze them. We've got enough to do 2 cycles through. So we have 6 cages here in the bunny barn, and then our brood buck that we're want to make sure he stays nice and cool. So that he doesn't have any issues making it through these warmer temperatures. So what we do is we've got a total of 14 tiles. We put 7 in the freezer at a time, and then as we bring 7 out to put in the cages here, we'll put another 7 back in the freezer, and then this is going to go on an every 2-hour cycle. And then as we bring tiles back in the house to go back in the freezer, they'll get washed and dried, and then they'll go back in the freezer for the next cycle. We're going to be doing this every 2 hours today until we get those temperatures breaking this evening back in, back below 80, 85, just in order to make sure that our rabbits can survive through these temperatures. As you're doing your hourly or bi-hourly checks in this extreme heat for your rabbits, there's some things you want to watch out for. First thing is going to be heavy panting with your rabbit. If they've got their mouth open and they're panting really heavy, some moderate panting is going to be normal in these temperatures. But if they're panting really heavy, it's a sign that they're starting to get a little stressed by the heat, and you might need to step up your cool down efforts. Another thing you're going to notice with most rabbits as they heat up, especially rabbits with erect ears, is you're going to start to notice some droop in the ears. It's perfectly normal to have 1 ear droop. If you start to see 2 ears droop, then that's one thing that you're going to really want to, once again, that's a sign that you're going to want to take some greater care in getting your rabbits cooled down. Now, as a word of caution, I don't recommend that you just bring your rabbits into an air-conditioned environment if you start to see them having signs of heat stress. That can actually cause more stress to their system by having those extreme fluctuations in temperature. So what you want to do is you want to bring something cool to them, like tiles. Another thing you can do is you can get water bottles and freeze them, or chill them in the refrigerator and then bring them out and the rabbits will lay next to them. One caution about those water bottles, though, is that the rabbits have a tendency to chew on everything, as I'm sure you've noticed already. So it's important that you keep an eye on those so that they're not chewing them and ingesting the plastic. One last thing to remember is that a rabbit's air conditioning is its ears. You know, just like dogs and a lot of other animals, they can't sweat. So the only way that they can maintain their body temperature is through their ears. So you'll notice as the temperature rises that their blood vessels in their ears is going to expand a little bit, and that's just to help to release some of their body heat. So one of the things that you can do if you do begin to see a rabbit that is experiencing some heat stress is you can take a cool wet rag and you can rub their ears with that wet rag, and as the water evaporates, it will help with some evaporative cooling. The most important thing is to try to manage it before you get to the point of overheating. Make sure your rabbits have shade. If you're going to set them outside on the ground, don't put them directly on the grass because it's going to prevent airflow. So if you're going to put them in some cages out on the grass, put some 2x4s down or something like that so that they can get some airflow underneath of those cages. Also, it's not a bad idea to bring a large room fan from inside the house. Now for this particular fan, you don't want it blowing directly on the rabbits because it's going to have it can really, dry them out, and if they dry out, then they're going to have issues helping to regulate their body temperature. But as you can see with this one, what we've got it doing is we've got it actually blowing up at the roof here in the bunny barn. Now we do have a metal roof on the bunny barn, so what this is going to do is it's just going to help keep that air from heating up and coming down onto the rabbits. Thank you so much for joining us today. I hope you found this video helpful in managing the temperatures with your rabbits and managing the weeds in your garden. Make sure that all of your outdoor animals have the water and shade that they need in order to survive these cold temperatures. If you did enjoy this video, I'd appreciate it if you would give us a quick like. And don't forget to subscribe so that you won't miss any of our upcoming videos. We're going to be continuing our cuniculture series over the next couple of weeks here. And, you never know what else we might film. Thank you so much. And as always, God bless.